Maria had always known sacrifice. Leaving her small village in the Philippines, she traveled thousands of miles to work as a maid in a foreign country. Her job was to clean, not just homes, but offices, buildings where people wore suits, typed on computers, and barely glanced her way. Now, she had started working night shifts at a towering corporate office in the heart of the city. The building was grand, marble floors, glass walls, and cold, polished elevators that reflected just how invisible she felt. Dressed in a faded uniform and carrying an old, worn-out bag, Maria quietly stepped into the lobby. She moved like a shadow, cleaning desks, wiping windows, and sweeping floors long after the last executive had gone home. Her hands were calloused, the skin cracked from years of scrubbing other people's messes. But she never complained. Each dollar she earned was sent back home to feed her children and pay for their schooling, her silent prayer for a better future. She spoke little English and mostly kept her head down, afraid to disturb anyone. Even though the office was full of life during the day, at night it was just her, the silence, and her thoughts. Sometimes, when she was sure no one was around, she would hum softly to herself, songs from her childhood, melodies her father used to play on a battered guitar, or American songs she'd memorized on the radio. No one noticed her, and that was fine by her. But there were moments, quiet moments, when she felt the sting of being invisible. She blinked back tears whenever she thought of her daughter's voice on the phone asking when she'd come home. Still, Maria carried on. She wasn't looking for attention, only survival. She had learned to endure, to stay in the background, to keep moving. But destiny had something else planned. And soon, the very people who had never noticed her would stop everything, just to listen. Because in Maria's silence, in her sadness, lived a voice that could shake souls, a voice waiting to be heard. The office was nearly empty, the sun long gone and the city lights flickering outside the windows. Only a few employees remained, finishing reports, chatting near the vending machine, trying to shake off the weight of the day. In a far corner, Maria quietly went about her work, mop in hand, dustpan swinging at her side. She moved silently, blending into the background as always. But tonight, as she wiped down a glass table, a soft melody escaped her lips. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but filled with emotion, an old song she'd grown up with, one she used to sing with her siblings under the stars. The night shift supervisor, a middle-aged man with a playful streak, caught the tune as he walked by. He paused, amused, then called out with a teasing grin, "Hey Maria, you got a voice on you. Come on, sing something. How about Hotel California? Bet you know that one." The few remaining employees chuckled, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. They didn't expect much, maybe a giggle, a shy wave of the hand, a quick, "No, sir." But Maria didn't laugh. She didn't shrink. She looked up slowly, her eyes wide but steady. And then, she nodded. They were taken aback. She placed her cleaning supplies to the side, wiped her palms on her apron, and stepped forward ever so slightly. Her lips parted, and after a brief silence, she began to sing. There was no music, just her voice. Pure. Raw. Soulful. It was the kind of voice that didn't try to impress, it simply told the truth. Every note carried the weight of her life, her longing, her memories. The teasing stopped. The laughter faded. One by one, heads turned toward her. The buzzing of machines, the clatter of keyboards, all ceased. Time seemed to slow as Maria sang the opening lines of Hotel California with a softness that struck deep. No one had expected this. Certainly not the supervisor who made the joke. But in that moment, they all knew, they were witnessing something rare, something beautiful, something deeply human. Maria stood in the center of the grand lobby, clutching her apron with trembling fingers. She closed her eyes, shutting out the polished floors and towering glass walls, and let the music guide her. Her voice rose slowly, steady and haunting, weaving through the empty corridors like a ghost of forgotten dreams. Every note was tinged with a sorrow she didn't have words for, a lifetime of goodbyes, of children left behind, of nights crying alone so no one would see. The familiar lyrics of Hotel California didn't sound like the carefree anthem people played at parties. From Maria, they sounded like a plea, a confession, a story only she could tell. The sound floated up the stairwells and curled around corners, echoing off marble and glass. On the second floor, a secretary who had been collecting papers paused, hearing the voice drift up to her. She leaned against the wall, her eyes welling with tears she couldn't explain. A security guard, mid-sip of lukewarm coffee, stopped, his hand frozen halfway to his lips, feeling the hair stand on his arms. Far above, the CEO sat alone in his sleek, modern office, buried in spreadsheets and profit projections. He barely noticed the hour or the loneliness that clung to him. But the song found him too. He turned his head slowly, hearing the raw emotion carry through the air vents and hallways. The words seemed to speak directly to him, about choices, sacrifices, dreams lost along the way. He felt something twist painfully in his chest, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself in years. He pushed back from his desk and stood, drawn toward the sound as though in a trance. Through the glass walls of his office, he saw the small figure below, a maid, eyes shut tight, pouring her entire soul into the song, unaware or uncaring who listened. The whole office felt different. No longer just a workplace of profits and deadlines, but a space where something real was happening. Something honest. Something human. And for the first time in a long time, everyone stopped what they were doing and truly listened. As Maria's voice carried the last mournful lines of the song, a hush settled over the entire building. No one dared to move or speak, afraid even a whisper might break the fragile magic that hung in the air. Her voice cracked slightly at the end, heavy with emotion she could no longer hide. And then there was silence, thick, reverent, almost holy. From the balcony above, the CEO watched with red-rimmed eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. He wasn't the kind of man who cried. He'd built his life around being tough, making hard decisions, never looking back. But in Maria's voice, he heard a story that was painfully familiar. He saw his own mother working 2 jobs to keep food on the table, the lines that worry etched in her face. He thought of the people he employed who lived paycheck to paycheck, whose names he'd never bothered to learn. He realized how easy it had been to see Maria as just the help, someone to clean up after everyone else, someone whose life didn't matter. But now, standing there listening to her, he felt deeply ashamed. He realized they hadn't just overlooked her, they had made her invisible. The CEO took a shaky breath and slowly descended the wide staircase, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. Every eye in the lobby followed him, but all he saw was Maria, small and vulnerable, staring at the ground after finishing her song. She looked afraid, as though she regretted singing at all. He stopped in front of her, voice thick with emotion he couldn't hide. "Thank you," he managed, pausing to swallow the lump in his throat. "Thank you for reminding us what humanity sounds like." Maria looked up, surprised, tears pooling in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't just a cleaner to them. She was a person, a mother, an artist, a woman with a soul that could move even the hardest heart. Around them, employees wiped their eyes, exchanging guilty, knowing glances. In that moment, something fundamental shifted. The office didn't feel like a place of power and hierarchy anymore. It felt like a place where people remembered they were all human. The next morning, the office felt different, as if the walls themselves held the echo of Maria's song. Word of what had happened the night before spread quickly. Employees who hadn't been there listened wide-eyed to those who had, shaking their heads in wonder at how they'd never really seen her before. Meetings were interrupted by hushed conversations about that voice and what she must have gone through. Maria arrived for her usual shift, expecting nothing to have changed. She clutched her old bag tightly, eyes downcast, bracing for the long hours of silent cleaning. But when she walked through the lobby, she found the entire staff waiting for her. The CEO was at the front, smiling with damp eyes that betrayed he hadn't quite recovered. He stepped forward and spoke gently, so everyone could hear. "Maria, we owe you more than an apology. You reminded us what it means to be human. Starting today, we want you on staff, not just as a cleaner, but as part of this family." He handed her a new contract with better pay, regular hours, and benefits that would allow her to send more money home without working herself to exhaustion. But it didn't stop there. The employees had taken up a collection, a fundraiser to help Maria's children go to school. Maria's lips trembled as she read the papers. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they weren't for sorrow. She looked at the people surrounding her, people who had once ignored her, and saw their genuine smiles and glistening eyes. The lobby filled with applause. Some clapped with polite respect, but many did so with unrestrained joy. Maria wiped her tears and tried to smile, and the whole room seemed to brighten. From that day on, the gleaming glass tower was never quite the same. People greeted her by name. They asked about her children. They remembered to say, please, and thank you, to everyone, no matter their job. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind lived the memory of that haunting, beautiful voice singing, Hotel California, and the woman who taught them all the cost of being human, and the immeasurable beauty of kindness.